Just after increasing the defense budget by significant numbers, China is now trying to say that it is very modest and it has got only to do with modernization of the People's Liberation Army and nothing much to do with India or other countries. But the fact remains that this increase in its defense outlay is in view of the emerging challenges for China, which also includes the kind of challenges that India poses for China. Reza, first the numbers. How big is it and what is the significance of it and how does it compare with other countries, main countries?
The numbers are very significant. China's defense outlay for 2018 is $175 billion. Now, if you compare it with the US, the figure for the US, for the projected figure for 2018 that President Trump has projected, is $686 billion, including almost $70 billion for the wars that US is fighting. Now, if you compare it to the US, it's a pretty small number. But when you compare it with India, it's pretty significant because it is China's outlay is $175 billion, almost 4 times what India has proposed for 2018-19, which is just $43 billion. So in just terms of sheer numbers, you can see the scale. This is a huge amount, and a lot of people say that what China publicly announces as a defense budget is actually a very small figure. Its actual spending on defense and on its military is believed to be much higher.
China has not fought a war, a major war. Perhaps the last war that it has actually fought was with India in 1962. So one wonders why China needs so much of military equipment. And in fact, the forces, actual soldiers, the boots on the ground is actually coming down. It has come down by some 300,000 under President Xi Jinping's leadership. There is also some sort of a rumbling within the military of the actual number coming down of troops. But why does China need so much? Has it got to do with the potential conflicts in South China Sea and East China Sea? Or is it America? Or is it India?
If you go by what the Chinese experts are saying, what the officials in China are saying, they're talking largely about modernizing the military. What they're saying is that they're going to spend a lot more on acquiring modern equipment, which to a certain extent is true because China is phasing out a lot of old equipment, old aircraft and other gear and getting in more modernized military equipment. It's also building 2 new aircraft carriers. But at the same time, you cannot overlook the fact that China has massively ramped up its presence in the area around India, not just on the soil, but also in the seas around India. It recently set up its first overseas military base in Djibouti. And it has been working on bolstering its navy so that it can project its force at greater lengths. So, it's a whole host of factors. I think it's looking at countries like India to match them or counter them. B, it's looking at disputes such as the South China Sea and other maritime and territorial disputes it has, including with India. And C, it's also looking at the spending that countries like the US are doing. Of course, US, as I said, it's $686 billion is much bigger than China's $175 billion.
The other thing that China is probably developing is a military industrial complex which will actually help China export its military hardware to other countries, including some of India's neighbors. This, as well as the potential increase in the defense outlay of the US under President Trump, is probably going to lead to a global arms race. While it will help the military industry, it is going to be very, I think, in my opinion, it is going to be a very disturbing development, given that we are going to live in the coming years under strongmen as leaders in various countries.
Well, the emergence of all these nationalist leaders has, had this added on, this knock-on effect of them all talking about bolstering their militaries. I mean, Trump has talked about it. Premier Li Keqiang yesterday talked about, a much stronger military that is able to cope with challenges across the board. So obviously, these people are all looking at, bolstering or ramping up defense spending. China, for a long time, has been known as known not to develop very high-tech military equipment, but that I think is no longer true. There are serious problems with a lot of their high-end military programs. Their efforts to build very high-tech military jets, for example, have run into problems. But at the same time, you can't overlook the fact that China has made huge technological advances in the last few decades, and these advances also are in the military sector. So they are developing better quality military equipment, and they're learning as they go along, and obviously their stuff is much cheaper. And already this is, we are seeing this. I mean, Pakistan is one prime beneficiary of the cheaper military technology from China. China has also, attempted to supply military gear to other neighbors that we have, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka. So, and India hasn't really been a big player in the export market, though it has developed some very good military jets and other equipment, but it hasn't really cornered that market. So, yes, we're going to see two things: the more competition for these emerging markets, but at the same time, the policymakers in India will be hard pressed to match whatever China is doing. And when you have another government in India which is also very strong on foreign policy and on national security, it may be tempted to hike up the spending on defense.
The increase in China's defense budget came just days after a proposal to prolong the rule of Xi Jinping as the president of China. We are seeing similar nationalist leaders who are increasing their budgets in defense in different parts of the world, in America, in Russia, and the rest of the world. We lived in a very similar kind of situation during the world wars and during Cold War. Is it going to lead to another similar situation for the world? That is another discussion, another day. Thanks for watching.